Jordan Cole was 38 years old, and until the Wednesday he came home early from Djibouti, he believed he was fighting to protect everything that mattered. 17 years as a Navy SEAL instructor, a paid-off house in Virginia Beach, a marriage he had sacrificed everything to keep alive across every deployment, every separation, every silent night overseas. He walked through his own front door unannounced, 3 weeks ahead of schedule, carrying nothing but a healed shoulder and the quiet certainty that the hardest part was finally behind him. What he found instead was a warm coffee mug that wasn't his, a razor in the guest bathroom that wasn't his, and a message on his wife's phone that made 17 years feel like a carefully constructed lie. He didn't scream. He didn't confront her. He picked up his bag, walked back to his truck, and drove to a hotel. Because Jordan Cole was not a man who moved without intelligence, and 3 days later, when his wife's lover showed up at his front door, dressed for dominance, finger jabbing at his chest, telling him to step outside so he could teach him a lesson, Preston Hale had no idea he was about to say those words to a man who had spent 17 years teaching Navy SEALs how to end a fight before it begins. He came to that porch certain he was walking into a lesson. He was right. It just wasn't the one he planned. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The late afternoon sun slanted through the airplane window as Jordan Cole settled into his seat. 17 years of military service had taught him to find comfort in uncomfortable spaces, but today, the familiar discomfort felt different. He was going home early, and for once, that was good news. His shoulder had healed well, better than the doctors initially predicted. The injury that cut his Djibouti rotation short wasn't career-ending, just a temporary setback. He rotated his arm slowly, feeling the restored strength. In 3 weeks, he'd be back to training SEALs, molding the next generation of warriors. But first, he had something better. Time with Adrienne. Jordan closed his eyes, letting his mind drift to the life waiting for him. Their house in Virginia Beach, modest but paid off, with the creaky third step he'd been meaning to fix. The garden Adrienne had started last spring. The quiet Sunday mornings when she'd cook breakfast, humming off-key to whatever was playing on her phone. 7 years of marriage, built around deployments and homecomings, held together by video calls and care packages, and the understanding that some sacrifices were worth making. Adrienne had adapted to military life better than he'd expected. She never complained about the separations, never made him feel guilty for serving. She just built her life around his absence, working from home, maintaining their routine. The plane touched down at Norfolk International right on schedule. Jordan collected his bag. Just one, he traveled light, and made his way through the terminal. No one was waiting for him at arrivals. He hadn't told anyone he was coming home early. The surprise would be worth it. He rented a car at the terminal, a simple sedan, and drove the familiar route home. The streets of Virginia Beach were quiet in the mid-afternoon lull. He passed the high school where he volunteered as a wrestling coach, the coffee shop where he and Adrienne had their standing Sunday date, the park where they walked on cool evenings. Jordan pulled into their driveway at 2:47 p.m. Adrienne's car was there. She worked from home on Wednesdays, had for years. The house looked exactly as he remembered it. White trim fresh from last summer's paint job, flower boxes under the windows full of the perennials Adrienne favored. He unlocked the front door quietly, smiling at the thought of surprising her. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning, the familiar sense of home wrapped around him, laundry detergent, the vanilla candle Adrienne always kept in the living room, coffee from the kitchen. The smile faded as his training kicked in. Something was off. In the guest bathroom, a man's razor sat on the counter. Not his brand, not his type. A jacket was folded over one of the dining room chairs. Charcoal gray, expensive cut. Definitely not his. In the kitchen dish rack, Two coffee mugs sat drying. One Adrienne's familiar blue ceramic, one he'd never seen before. He touched it carefully, still warm. Jordan moved through the house with the silent precision that had kept him alive in hostile territory. Each step measured, each breath controlled. His mind catalogued details automatically, building a picture he didn't want to see. The master bedroom door was partially open. Adrienne was asleep on their bed, her dark hair spread across his pillow. She looked peaceful, beautiful, foreign. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark. As he stood in the doorway, it lit up with an incoming message. From where he stood, he could read the preview clearly. Last night was incredible. When is he back again? The contact name, P. Work. Jordan's hand moved smoothly, automatically, pulling out his own phone. He photographed the screen without touching anything, without making a sound. The movement was clinical, detached, like documenting evidence at a crime scene. He stood there for another moment, looking at his sleeping wife. 7 years of marriage, 17 years of service. All of it collapsed into this single, silent moment. Jordan turned and walked out exactly as he had entered. He picked up his bag by the door, he hadn't set it down, and left. The front door closed behind him with barely a click. In his rental car, he sat for a moment, hands resting on the wheel. Then he drove to the nearest hotel, checked in with mechanical efficiency, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hotel room was generic, anonymous. Jordan sat on the edge of the bed, his phone on the small table beside him. He opened the photo he'd taken. The message glowed on his screen. The words unchanged, undeniable. He stared at it for a long time, his face utterly still. Then, he opened his laptop. Daylight crept through the hotel curtains as Jordan sat at the small desk, his laptop open before him. He hadn't slept. Military training had taught him to function without rest when necessary, and right now, clarity mattered more than comfort. He logged into their joint bank account with steady fingers, the same way he'd done countless times from bases around the world. The statement history loaded. Jordan started with the most recent month, then worked backward methodically. At first glance, everything looked normal. Regular bills, grocery purchases, the usual pattern of a shared life. But as he dug deeper, a different pattern emerged. The transfers were careful, spaced out to avoid attention. 2,000 here, 1,500 there, moving from their joint savings into an account number he didn't recognize. Jordan opened a spreadsheet and began documenting each transaction. Dates and amounts lined up in neat rows. The total made his jaw tighten. $34,000 over 18 months. He cross-referenced the dates with his deployment calendar. The correlation was perfect. The largest transfers happened during his longest absences, when he was overseas, and couldn't check the accounts regularly. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. This was calculated. Jordan sat back in the uncomfortable hotel chair, his mind working with the same focused precision he applied to mission planning. He picked up his phone and called the one person he knew would understand exactly what he needed. Claudette answered on the second ring. "Little brother, it's early. I need 10 minutes of your time," Jordan said. His voice was steady, controlled. "You have it." He laid out the situation with military efficiency. His early return, the discovery, the financial trail. No emotion, just facts. Claudette, a retired probation officer who'd spent 30 years reading between people's lines, listened without interruption. 34,000, she repeated when he finished. Over 18 months. Yes. While you were deployed. Yes. A pause. Then, tell me what you need. Stand by, Jordan said. I'm not done gathering intel. I'm here when you're ready. Claudette's voice held the same calm certainty it had when they were kids, and she'd helped him navigate their difficult childhood. Be careful, Jordan. Always am. He waited until 9:30 a.m., when he knew Adrienne would be at her office. The house felt different in the morning light. Less like home, more like a crime scene. Jordan moved through it with purpose, starting with the master bedroom closet. The shoebox was on the top shelf, behind a row of winter boots. Inside, hotel receipts from places he'd never been: Charleston, Savannah, Virginia Beach resorts just miles from their home. Dates that matched his absence. He photographed each one with his phone, then replaced them exactly as he'd found them. The book of poetry was on her bedside shelf, a volume he'd given her 3 years ago that she'd never seemed to read. Inside were the cards, tucked between pages like pressed flowers. Birthday wishes, weekend memories, inside jokes he wasn't part of. All signed with a simple P, each one carefully documented through his phone's camera. Jordan sat at their desktop computer next and logged into their shared iCloud account. Adrian had always been organized with technology, maintaining neat folders of photos from every event and trip. He found what he was looking for in a folder labeled Work Conference, Charleston. The photo showed Adrienne at a beachfront restaurant, sun setting behind her, smiling at someone across the table. The man was partially visible in the reflection of the window behind her, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive watch that caught the light. The date stamp matched a week when Jordan had been in Bahrain. Adrienne had told him she was visiting her college roommate in Atlanta. He downloaded the photo, along with several others from the same trip. Each one felt like another piece of evidence, building a case he never wanted to make. Before leaving, Jordan straightened everything exactly as he'd found it. He'd been trained to leave no trace, and that training served him now. Standing in the doorway, he sent a text. Just landed. Heading to debrief. Home tonight. Adrienne's response came almost immediately. A red heart emoji, casual and intimate, as if nothing was wrong. In his truck outside the house, Jordan scrolled through the photos he'd collected. Hotel receipts, birthday cards, beach dinners, money transfers, each one a carefully documented betrayal. His face remained perfectly still, the same expression he wore in combat situations, focused, controlled, unreadable. He started the engine. The hotel wasn't home, but right now, it was where he needed to be. He had preparations to make before tonight. The sun was setting when Jordan pulled into their driveway, his duffel bag packed exactly as it would be after a normal rotation. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. Composed, neutral, the face of a man coming home from a long deployment. Nothing more. Adrienne must have been watching for his arrival. The front door flew open before he reached the porch. She ran to him, tears already forming, and threw her arms around his neck. Her performance was flawless. The slight tremor in her voice, the way she pressed her face into his chest, even the familiar scent of her shampoo. "I missed you so much," she whispered, holding him tighter. Jordan returned the embrace with careful precision, matching her emotional tempo. "Missed you too." His voice was warm, present, exactly how he'd sound if he didn't know what he knew. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You must be starving. Let me throw something together." In the kitchen, Jordan sat at their familiar table while Adrienne moved with practiced efficiency. She talked as she cooked, filling the air with questions about his flight, his shoulder, the base medical facilities. He answered each one with the right amount of detail, watching her work. She'd changed her hair slightly during his deployment. Subtle highlights he was expected to notice. "Your hair looks nice," he said, right on cue. She beamed, touching it self-consciously. "You noticed. I wasn't sure if you would." They ate pasta with the sauce he liked, her own recipe. She reached across the table frequently to touch his hand, maintaining physical connection. 7 years of marriage had made her fluent in his preferences, his rhythms. She knew exactly how to make him feel welcomed, cherished, secure. Jordan ate steadily, participating in the choreography of their reunion. He asked about her work, her family, the small details that showed he'd been thinking of her. Each response she gave was a data point, catalogued and cross-referenced against what he now knew to be true. I thought about this moment so many times, she said, squeezing his hand. Having you home. Just us. Like this. Jordan squeezed back, his thumb brushing her knuckles. Me too. The doorbell rang at 9:07 p.m. Jordan stood before Adrian could react. I'll get it. He opened the front door to find a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit, his stance wide and dominant. Preston Hale was exactly what his photos had suggested. Gym-built, designer-dressed, radiating the particular arrogance of someone who'd never had their authority genuinely challenged. Recognition and surprise flickered across Preston's face before settling into manufactured confidence. He recovered quickly, shifting his weight forward. You must be Jordan, Preston said, his tone dismissive. We need to have a conversation about your wife. Jordan remained still in the doorway, studying Preston with the same quiet focus he used to evaluate tactical situations. He said nothing. I've been seeing Adrian for 2 years, Preston continued, clearly expecting a reaction. When Jordan didn't provide one, he stepped closer. Maybe we should step outside, soldier boy. Let me teach you something about how the real world works. Preston's hand came up, pressing against Jordan's chest. It was meant to be intimidating, a physical punctuation mark to establish dominance. It was also his last mistake. Jordan moved with fluid precision. His right hand captured Preston's wrist, redirecting it through a controlled arc that forced Preston's shoulder to rotate unnaturally. His left hand found the precise pressure point where the trapezius muscle met the collarbone. A subtle shift of body weight, a calculated adjustment of angle, and Preston was suddenly airborne. The impact with the porch was controlled but absolute. Preston landed face down, his arm immobilized behind him at an angle that made any movement impossible without risking serious injury. The entire sequence took 7 seconds. Jordan crouched beside him, his voice calm and conversational. I train Navy SEALs for a living. You have 3 seconds. He released his hold. Preston scrambled to his feet and half ran to his car. Any pretense of authority completely evaporated. The expensive car's engine roared to life, and he was gone. Jordan turned around slowly. Adrienne stood in the hallway, one hand pressed against her mouth, face drained of color. She looked small suddenly, stripped of her careful performance. He looked at her for a long moment. His expression wasn't angry. It was something far worse. It was the look of someone seeing absolute truth for the first time. Every illusion stripped away. We need to talk, he said simply, walking past her to sit at the kitchen table. After a moment, he heard her footsteps following behind him. The kitchen felt smaller now, compressed by the weight of what hung between them. Jordan sat perfectly still, his hands flat on the table, while Adrienne perched on the edge of her chair as if ready to flee. The house had gone quiet enough to hear the hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the wall clock marking each second. How long? Jordan asked, his voice measured and calm. Adrienne's hands twisted in her lap. 2 years, she whispered, not meeting his eyes. Tell me how it started. She took a shaky breath. I met Preston at work. He was consulting on a project. Her voice cracked slightly. I didn't plan for anything to happen. Jordan watched her face with the same focused attention he gave to analyzing combat scenarios. Every micro-expression, every shift in tone became data points in a larger intelligence picture. When did it become physical? Adrienne flinched at the directness of the question. 6 months after we met. You were deployed to Bahrain. Tears began sliding down her cheeks. I was so lonely, Jordan. The deployments kept getting longer. The silence between our calls felt endless. Jordan nodded slightly, encouraging her to continue while revealing nothing of his own thoughts. I told myself it was just dinner. Just conversation. She wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. But then, one night he kissed me, and I didn't stop it. Everything was so hard, and he was there, and you were gone again. The Charleston trip, Jordan said quietly. When you said you were visiting Rebecca. Fresh tears spilled over. Yes. What else should I know? Adrian looked up, seemingly surprised by the calmness of his questioning. I don't know what you mean. Have you discussed divorce with him? She hesitated a fraction too long. We've talked about possibilities. Nothing concrete. Jordan noted the careful phrasing, the deliberate vagueness. He'd seen enough battlefield deception to recognize partial truths deployed as tactical cover. I need you to understand something, he said, his voice still steady. I'm not asking these questions for dramatic effect. I'm gathering information. I need a complete picture. Jordan, please. Adrian reached across the table. He didn't move his hands to meet hers. I know I've hurt you terribly, but we can work through this. We can get counseling, rebuild trust. 17 years together has to mean something. He studied her face, the earnest expression, the hopeful tilt of her chin. She truly believed she was steering this conversation toward reconciliation. I need a few days, he said finally, standing up, to process everything. Relief flooded her features. This was the response she'd hoped for, space that could lead to forgiveness. Of course, whatever you need. I'll stay in the guest room for now. He walked upstairs without looking back, carrying only what he needed for the night. The guest room felt appropriate, neutral territory in what had become contested space. Jordan woke before dawn, long habit keeping his internal clock precise. He heard Adrian's quiet breathing from the master bedroom as he passed, heading downstairs with his phone. The sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky when he called Claudette. It's done, he said, when she answered. The confrontation happened last night. Preston showed up unexpectedly. That's been handled. Then Adrian and I talked. How much did you tell her? Enough to confirm what we knew. Not everything. Good. Claudette's voice was crisp, focused. You need Patricia Osei. She's the best family law attorney in Virginia Beach. I've known her 20 years. She doesn't play games, and she doesn't lose. Jordan wrote the name down. You trust her? Completely. And she understands military divorce complications. Call her office this morning. Tell them I referred you. They'll get you in quickly. He ended the call with Claudette and immediately dialed Patricia's office number. The receptionist answered on the second ring. I need an urgent consultation with Patricia Osei, he said. Claudette Cole referred me. It's regarding a military divorce with complicated asset issues. One moment, please. He heard keyboard clicks. We can see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Will that work? Yes. He took down the office details and ended the call. Upstairs, he could hear Adrian beginning to stir. The morning routine would start soon. Coffee, shower, the careful dance of shared space. Jordan set his phone down on the guest room desk and sat in perfect stillness, listening to the house wake up around him. Everything was in motion now. There would be no going back. Patricia Osei's office reflected its owner. Organized, precise, without unnecessary decoration. Jordan sat across from her desk, the morning sun casting sharp angles through vertical blinds. He'd laid out the evidence methodically. Bank statements, photographs, text messages, everything arranged in chronological order. Patricia studied each document with focused intensity, making occasional notes in a leather-bound portfolio. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as she cross-referenced dates and amounts. The financial pattern is clear, she said, tapping the bank statements. Regular transfers during deployment periods, always just under amounts that would trigger automatic notifications. That shows premeditation and understanding of banking thresholds. Jordan nodded. The timing was deliberate. More than deliberate. Patricia turned her monitor so Jordan could see it. I had my contact at the county recorder's office run a search this morning. Look at these property queries. The screen showed a list of database searches, all tied to a commercial real estate firm's access credentials. Jordan recognized the company name from Preston's business card. Preston Hale has been systematically investigating your assets for the past 14 months, Patricia explained. Your primary residence, the rental property you inherited from your father in Norfolk, even detailed queries about military pension structures specific to your rank and years of service. Jordan's expression remained neutral, but his hands tensed slightly on the armrests. Adrian would have had to provide that information. Exactly. Patricia pulled up another screen. The searches are precise, targeted. Someone with intimate knowledge of your finances was feeding him intelligence. This wasn't casual research. It was asset reconnaissance for a planned divorce action. She turned back to face Jordan directly. The affair wasn't the primary objective. It was cover for a systematic financial extraction. They were positioning for a quick settlement while you were emotionally compromised, probably banking on you being too devastated to fight back effectively. The timeline matches, Jordan said quietly. The money transfers began 6 months after they met. That's when she claims the physical relationship started. Patricia nodded. Classic pattern. Establish the emotional narrative first, then begin the financial groundwork. We need a forensic accountant to trace every dollar. Do you have someone you trust? Yes. Dwight Phillips, former naval intelligence analyst I served with. He's in private practice now, specializes in military divorce cases. Perfect. Call him immediately. We need to file for emergency asset protection before they realize we're moving. Jordan pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway. Dwight answered on the second ring. Jordan, been a while. Need your help, brother. Forensic accounting for a divorce action. Time sensitive. Military spouse? Yes. Systematic extraction during deployments. Commercial real estate angle involved? Send me what you have. I'll start today. Jordan returned to Patricia's office. She was already drafting the emergency filing. Dwight's on board, he said. He'll begin the trace immediately. Good. I'm preparing the protective order for the accounts we know about. We'll add others as Dwight uncovers them. She looked up from her keyboard. Jordan, I need you to understand something. This level of financial planning, involving outside business resources, accessing private records, it's beyond normal infidelity. This was a coordinated effort to strip you of assets while you were serving overseas. I understand. When you go home tonight, give nothing away. Let them think you're still processing the emotional aspect. The more time they spend believing you're paralyzed by the affair, the more evidence we can gather. Jordan drove home that evening, arriving just as Adrienne was preparing dinner. She looked up hopefully when he entered the kitchen. How was your day? She asked carefully. Routine. Talked to the JAG office about deployment paperwork. The lie came easily. He'd learned long ago that the best deception was built on plausible truth. Still processing everything else? She nodded, relief visible in her shoulders. Take all the time you need. I'm here when you want to talk more. Later, alone in the guest room, Jordan opened his laptop to find Dwight's initial email. The preliminary findings were clinical, precise. Account traces, transfer patterns, timeline correlations. The scope of the betrayal emerged in clean spreadsheet columns and transaction timestamps. Jordan stared at the numbers until they blurred together. He closed the laptop slowly and lay back on the bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The white paint above him held no answers, but it received his silent cataloging of every calculated deception, every carefully planned theft, every moment he'd been protecting a life that was being dismantled from within. The house settled around him in the dark, creaking softly with familiar sounds that now carried new meaning. He remained motionless, breathing steady, as the full architecture of what had been done to him became visible in his mind with perfect, terrible clarity. Jordan sat in his office at the Naval Special Warfare Center, reviewing the encrypted document Dwight had sent. The forensic report was methodical, precise, exactly what he'd expect from a former intelligence analyst. Each transaction was cataloged with timestamps, account numbers, and corresponding deployment dates. The $34,000 transfer pattern was there in stark detail, but it was the newer discoveries that made Jordan's hands go still on the keyboard. 4 months ago, while he was still in Djibouti, Adrian had paid a $2,500 retainer to Harrison and Associates, a law firm specializing in military divorces. The consultation predated his injury, predated his early return. She'd been planning her exit before he even knew there was a door. But it was the insurance section of Dwight's report that turned the room cold. 18 months ago, Adrian had increased his life insurance policy from $500,000 to $1.5 million. The paperwork showed Preston Hale's electronic signature as a witnessing board member of the subsidiary insurance company. They had calculated his worth in death benefits, mapped his military survival payments, quantified his value as a corpse versus a living man. Jordan closed the laptop slowly. He picked up his phone and texted Alonzo, "Coffee? Need to talk." 30 minutes later, they sat at a corner table in the Base Exchange Cafe. Alonzo looked exactly as he always did. Broad-shouldered in his coaching jacket, direct gaze, no pretense. He'd been family since before Jordan's brother passed, and that hadn't changed. "Talk to me," Alonzo said, pushing a coffee across the table. Jordan laid out the situation in precise, controlled sentences. The affair, the money, the pre-planned divorce. He watched his brother-in-law's face darken with each revelation. "I need to know something," Jordan said. "You've been around more than I have these past 2 years. Did you notice changes? Patterns?" Alonzo was quiet for a moment, turning his cup slowly. "Yeah, about a year ago, maybe more. She started declining family dinners when you were deployed. Stopped coming to the kids' games. When we'd invite her over, there was always a work thing, a headache, some reason. I thought maybe the deployments were just getting harder for her, but it wasn't that." "No." Alonzo's jaw tightened. "She was separating herself, creating distance from your family so the break would be cleaner." "Jordan, I should have said something. You couldn't have known." "Still." Alonzo leaned forward. "Whatever you need from me, testimony, character witness, anything, I'm there. The whole family will be. She doesn't get to rewrite who you are." Jordan nodded once, gratitude in the gesture. He finished his coffee and stood. One more stop to make. 20 minutes later, he sat across from Captain Richards, his commanding officer, laying out the situation with the same precise control. The captain listened without interruption, then pulled out the appropriate disclosure forms. "Smart to get ahead of this," Richards said, sliding the papers across his desk. "Document everything. Keep your career insulated from whatever happens next." Jordan filled out each form methodically, protecting his security clearance, his instructor status, his 17 years of service. He would not leave any angle exposed, any weapon available for use against him. The sun was setting when he pulled into his driveway. The house sat quiet in the gathering dark, windows glowing warm yellow, a perfect picture of domestic peace. The kind of home other deployed servicemen dreamed about coming back to, the kind of life he'd believed he was protecting. He could see Adrienne moving in the kitchen window, probably starting dinner. She still performed the role of devoted wife perfectly, even now, even after he knew. Her dedication to the lie was almost admirable in its completeness. Jordan's hands rested loose on the steering wheel. The forensic report sat in his briefcase. The disclosure paperwork was filed. Alonzo's testimony was secured. All the pieces were in position. He looked at the house, really looked at it, taking in every detail he'd missed before. The careful maintenance that would increase resale value, the upgraded fixtures she'd insisted on last spring, the new landscaping that improved curb appeal, even the home improvements had been part of the plan. Jordan sat very still in the gathering darkness, the engine ticking as it cooled. In his mind, he mapped out the next moves with the same precision he brought to every operation. Each step, each document, each revelation would be deployed at exactly the right moment. No emotion, no waste, no mercy. Jordan sat across from Patricia in her downtown office early the next morning, sunlight slanting through Venetian blinds. She had 3 stacks of documents arranged precisely on her mahogany desk: bank records, Dwight's forensic report, and the draft divorce petition. The timing needs to be exact, Patricia said, tapping the petition. We file this simultaneously with the Emergency Asset Protection Order. The moment it hits the system, that account freezes. She won't be able to touch a penny of that $34,000. Jordan nodded. And the grounds? Dissipation of marital assets is our primary claim. The systematic transfer of funds during your deployments constitutes financial misconduct. The fraud angle comes from the life insurance manipulation, increasing the death benefit while consulting with Preston about military survival benefit. Patricia's voice carried controlled anger. It's predatory behavior, Jordan. The court will see it that way. Timeline. I can have everything filed by close of business today. But before that happens, she leaned forward. You need to get ahead of the narrative. Family first, then Preston's employer. Don't give either of them time to construct alternative versions. Jordan checked his watch. Adrian's parents are expecting me in an hour. Good. Keep it factual. No emotional appeals. Let the evidence speak. The drive to his in-laws' home in Chesapeake took 40 minutes. Frank and Marie Harrison had always treated him like a son. The betrayal would hit them hard. They were waiting in their living room, the same room where he'd asked for their blessing to marry Adrian 7 years ago. Marie offered coffee. Frank sat in his usual armchair, retired military himself, reading Jordan's bearing instantly. Something's wrong, Frank said quietly. Jordan placed Dwight's report on the coffee table. I need to show you something before Adrienne calls you. For the next 30 minutes, he walked them through it. Clinically, precisely. The affair. The money transfers. The divorce preparations. The life insurance manipulation. He showed them bank statements, timestamps, photographs. He kept his voice steady and professional. Marie started crying halfway through. Frank's face went granite still. 2 years, Frank said finally. His voice was hollow. While you were deployed. I'm not here to ask you to choose sides, Jordan said. You're her parents. But you deserve to hear the truth from me first. Marie wiped her eyes. She'll try to explain it away. Say she was lonely, that the deployments were too hard. We know what deployment marriage looks like, Frank cut in. This wasn't that. This was calculated. He looked at Jordan. What do you need from us? Just the truth. If she tries to revise history. They both nodded. Marie hugged him before he left. Frank's handshake was iron firm. Jordan's next stop was downtown, the corporate headquarters of Preston's real estate firm. The ethics and compliance officer, Sarah Chen, met him in a glass-walled conference room. Mr. Cole, she said, how can I help you? Jordan placed a sealed envelope on the table. Documentation showing that Preston Hale used your company's proprietary data systems to access private financial information about me, a private citizen, for personal benefit. Property records, asset searches, pension projections, all traced to his login credentials over a 14-month period. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her posture straightened. That would constitute a serious violation of company policy and, possibly, state privacy laws. I'm not here to make accusations. I'm providing information your compliance department should have. He stood. What you do with it is your decision. By late afternoon, Jordan was back in Patricia's office. She handed him a copy of the filed petition and the Emergency Asset Protection Order. It's done, she said. The account is frozen. She'll find out when she tries to access it. Jordan drove home as sunset painted the sky orange. Adrian was in the living room, scrolling on her phone, probably texting Preston, coordinating their next moves, unaware that all their carefully laid plans were already dismantled. He walked past without speaking and closed the guest room door. Setting his alarm for the morning, Jordan lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed. For the first time since coming home, his mind was quiet. The pieces were in place. The truth was in motion. Justice would arrive on its own schedule. He slept deeply, dreamlessly, while somewhere across town, A series of automated court notifications began populating inboxes, starting an irreversible chain of events that would reshape multiple lives by morning. Adrienne woke to pale morning light filtering through the bedroom curtains. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, the same routine she'd followed every morning for 2 years. Check the account balance, confirm the nest egg was growing, calculate how much longer until she could make her move. Her thumbprint unlocked the banking app. She tapped the account number she knew by heart. An error message appeared. Access temporarily restricted. Please contact customer service. She frowned, tried again. Same message. Must be a system glitch. She closed the app completely and reopened it. The error remained unchanged. Her heart rate kicked up slightly. She dialed the bank's customer service line, drumming her fingers on the bedsheet, while automated prompts guided her through verification. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole. How can I assist you today?" The representative's voice was professionally pleasant. "I'm having trouble accessing my personal account ending in 4721. The app shows it's restricted." Keyboard clicks on the other end. A pause. "Yes, I'm showing a legal hold was placed on that account yesterday afternoon, pending a court-ordered financial investigation. I'm unable to provide further details, but you can contact the county clerk's office for more information." The phone nearly slipped from Adrienne's suddenly numb fingers. "A legal hold? There must be some mistake. I apologize, but I can't override or modify legal orders. You'll need to address this through proper channels." Adrienne ended the call. Her hands were shaking as she pulled up Jordan's number. Straight to voicemail. She called again immediately. Same result. A third time. Nothing. She dressed quickly, mind racing. Jordan had been different since coming home. Quieter. More distant. She'd attributed it to the deployment, to needing time to readjust. Now every interaction of the past week replayed with new context. The drive to downtown Virginia Beach took 20 minutes. She'd researched family law attorneys months ago as part of her preparation. Now she sat in Catherine Walsh's waiting room, trying to project calm while her carefully constructed plan cracked beneath her feet. Catherine reviewed the situation, made some calls, requested documentation from opposing counsel. Within an hour, a thick digital file arrived from Patricia Osei's office. 47 pages of meticulously organized evidence. Catherine's face grew increasingly grave as she scrolled through the documents. Bank records, text messages, property searches, insurance policy modifications. The timeline laid out with devastating clarity. "Mrs. Cole," Catherine said finally, closing her laptop, "I need to be very direct. This is not a position you want to litigate from. The documented evidence of financial misconduct alone." She shook her head. "My strong recommendation is to pursue an immediate settlement." Adrienne's phone buzzed. "Preston calling." She sent it to voicemail. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Systematic transfer of marital assets during your husband's deployments. Unauthorized access to his private financial information through Mr. Hale's company resources. Life insurance policy manipulation that suggests—" Catherine paused diplomatically. "Concerning intentions. The court will not view this favorably." Preston called again and again. She continued ignoring it. "What are my options? Realistically? Accept a settlement that lets you walk away with your personal assets and vehicle. The house is legally protected as his premarital property. The transferred funds will need to be returned. Fighting this will only increase your exposure and legal fees." Adrienne's phone lit up with text messages from Preston. "We need to move faster. Push the divorce through now. Call me back immediately." She turned the phone face down on Catherine's desk. Preston was panicking, pushing for acceleration without understanding they'd already lost control of the timeline. He didn't know about the forensic accounting. He didn't know Jordan had documented everything. He was operating from an outdated playbook, while Jordan was already 3 moves ahead. I need time to think, Adrian said. Catherine's expression was sympathetic but firm. Don't take too long. This situation will not improve with delay. Back in her car in the parking lot, Adrienne sat with both hands gripping the steering wheel. The morning sun felt too bright, too exposing. 2 years of careful planning. The secret account, the gradual transfers, the exit strategy with Preston. All of it unraveling faster than she could process. Jordan hadn't been processing their conversations this past week. He'd been gathering intelligence. He hadn't been adjusting to being home. He'd been building a case. Every interaction had served his purpose while she thought she was managing his reaction. She'd believed his quietness meant passivity. She'd mistaken his patience for weakness. She'd never actually known him at all. Her phone kept buzzing with Preston's increasingly frantic messages. She turned it off completely. The silence felt like an admission. Preston Hale sat in the waiting area outside Human Resources, straightening his tie for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The leather chair, usually comfortable, felt like concrete beneath him. Through the glass walls he could see Sarah Martinez, the head of ethics and compliance, speaking with 2 other executives. Their expressions were grave. The door opened. "Mr. Hale, please come in." Preston stood, adjusting his suit jacket. Armani, like always. The fabric that usually gave him confidence now felt like armor that was already failing. Sarah sat behind her desk, flanked by Richard Chen from Legal and David Morris, the COO. The arrangement wasn't random. This was a tribunal. "Please have a seat, Preston." Sarah's voice was professional, devoid of their usual friendly rapport. "We've received documentation indicating you accessed proprietary data systems to obtain private financial information on a private citizen for personal use, specifically running unauthorized searches on properties and assets belonging to Jordan Cole." Preston's mouth went dry. "I can explain." "The evidence is quite thorough," Richard interrupted, opening a folder. "Multiple unauthorized searches over 14 months. Access to pension projections through our insurance subsidiary. Property records that had no connection to any active company business. We take data privacy very seriously," David added. "You know this. It's in every contract we sign." Preston leaned forward. "This is clearly a misunderstanding." "Your colleagues have been very cooperative," Sarah cut in. "Several have provided additional context about these searches, about conversations you had regarding this information." The blood drained from Preston's face. He thought about Marcus in analytics, who'd helped him run those deeper searches. Amanda in insurance, who'd pulled those pension numbers. All the people who'd smiled to his face while resenting his success, his confidence, his authority. They were talking. All of them. "Effective immediately, you're suspended pending full investigation," Sarah continued. "Building access revoked. Email disabled. Company phone and laptop need to be surrendered before you leave." "This is ridiculous," Preston stood up. "I've brought in millions for this firm. I sit on the subsidiary board." "Sat," David corrected quietly. Past tense. Preston drove home in a daze. The suspension hit the rumor mill within hours. His phone buzzed constantly. Colleagues pretending concern while fishing for details. Industry contacts suddenly too busy for calls. He tried calling Adrienne. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. The carefully constructed exit they'd planned was collapsing. All because of Jordan. Quiet, unassuming Jordan who was supposed to break quietly, who wasn't supposed to fight back. Desperate, Preston texted Jordan directly, "We need to talk." To his surprise, Jordan replied within minutes. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Coastal Coffee on Pacific." The coffee shop was half full when Preston arrived. Jordan sat at a corner table, a woman Preston didn't recognize beside him. She watched Preston approach with the steady gaze of someone cataloging detail. Preston sat down, tried to project authority. "This has gone far enough. You've made your point." "No," Jordan said quietly. "I haven't." Listen, we can work something out. This situation with my firm is the natural consequence of your choices. Preston's jaw tightened. Are you enjoying this? Destroying my career? I didn't destroy anything, Jordan replied. I simply documented what you did. The rest happened on its own. Preston leaned forward, voice dropping. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? The woman, Jordan's sister, Preston realized, smiled without warmth. That's exactly the problem, Jordan said. You came to my house to put your hands on me because you thought I was someone who could be pushed around. You were wrong about that. You were wrong about a lot of things. Jordan stood, placed exact change on the table for his untouched coffee. Without another word, without a backward glance, he walked out. His sister followed, leaving Preston alone with the scattered bills and cooling cups. Jordan crossed the parking lot, Claudette falling into step beside him. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. He unlocked his truck, and they drove away, leaving Preston visible through the coffee shop window. A man watching the last pieces of his carefully constructed authority crumble into nothing. The mediation room felt sterile under fluorescent lights. Jordan sat straight-backed in his chair, Patricia beside him with organized folders laid precisely on the conference table. Across from them, Adrienne seemed smaller somehow, her designer blazer hanging loose at the shoulders. Her attorney kept shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact. Let's review the terms, Patricia said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who knew she'd already won. She began methodically listing items. The house would remain solely in Jordan's name. The $34,000 would be repaid in full with a 15% penalty for documented financial misconduct, and Jordan would retain primary ownership of the inherited rental property. Adrienne would keep her car, her personal possessions, and receive a modest settlement that amounted to less than 3 months of her salary. Jordan watched Adrienne's face as Patricia spoke. The confidence she'd carried for 2 years, through the affair, through the careful financial maneuvering, through all those deployment goodbyes while she was already planning her exit, had evaporated. She looked like someone waking up from a long sleep to find the world wasn't what she'd imagined. Her attorney nodded along with each point, occasionally marking notes. There would be no counter-proposals. The documentation Patricia had assembled left no room for negotiation. The forensic accounting, the unauthorized property searches, the life insurance manipulation. It was all there in precise, damning detail. Jordan didn't speak during the review. He'd said everything that needed saying through his actions, through the methodical dismantling of a plan that had underestimated him so completely. He simply sat, still and focused, the way he'd been trained to maintain awareness in complex situations. When Patricia finished, Adrienne's attorney leaned over to whisper something in her ear. She shook her head once, then looked directly at Jordan for the first time since they'd sat down. I didn't think you'd fight for any of this, she said quietly. Jordan gathered his portfolio and stood. That was your first mistake, he said. Thinking I wouldn't. Without another word, he walked out of the room, Patricia following with her precisely organized evidence of everything Adrienne had tried to take. 6 months later, Jordan sat in his commanding officer's office, requesting a transfer to the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. It came with a promotion, lead instructor for the Advanced SEAL Training Program. His CO signed off immediately. Jordan had earned it through 17 years of service and the quiet dignity with which he'd handled the divorce. The move to San Diego felt like exhaling after holding his breath for too long. He found a small apartment overlooking the water in Imperial Beach, sparsely furnished, but filled with light. On his 3rd weekend there, he visited a local shelter and met Atlas, a sprawling mixed breed with terrible manners and absolute devotion. The dog destroyed 2 couch cushions in the first week. Jordan didn't mind. He started coaching youth wrestling on Saturday mornings at a local gym. The kids reminded him why he'd loved the sport since high school. The discipline, the focus, the way it taught you to think 3 moves ahead. Some weekends he'd take Atlas to the beach afterward, letting the dog chase waves while he watched the horizon. 18 months after the divorce, Claudette flew out for a long weekend. They sat on his small balcony drinking coffee, talking about nothing important, comfortable in the silence between conversations. The following month, Alonzo brought his football team out for a tournament. They all came over for a barbecue, teenage boys demolishing hamburgers while Atlas begged for scraps. Meanwhile, across the country, Preston Hale's suspension had become permanent termination. The civil liability from his firm's lawsuit followed him like a shadow. He landed eventually at a mid-level property management company in Charlotte, where no one knew his name or cared about his former board positions. His authority, so carefully constructed over 20 years, had crumbled to dust. Adrienne moved into a small apartment in Virginia Beach. The life she'd planned, the clean break, the comfortable transition, the validation of her choices, never materialized. She wasn't destitute. She wasn't destroyed. But she was alone, with the weight of what she'd done, which turned out to be its own kind of consequence. One evening, Jordan walked Atlas along the shoreline at dusk. The dog ran ahead, chasing seabirds and barking at the waves. Jordan watched him with quiet satisfaction. He didn't feel bitter anymore. He didn't feel broken. He felt like a man who had finally found his true navigation point, not in what he'd lost, but in what he'd proven about himself in the losing. He picked up a piece of driftwood and threw it into the surf. Atlas bounded after it, joyful and certain. Jordan kept walking, the sound of waves steady beneath his feet. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.